let's turn our attention to the AAC, and this is just a different year. It's a new life because Cincinnati represented the first Group of 5 team in the playoffs, but unfortunately for Luke Fickell, a lot of those key players are gone, including the quarterback. That does not mean Cincinnati will be a bottom dweller AAC team. They're still going to be one of the top teams to beat. It's just that expecting them to be a playoff contender, no, not going to happen. They also have to find themselves a quarterback. Ritter was such a winner for that program, and I'm not very excited, when you're looking at a guy who may start that was an Eastern Michigan quarterback. So it's going to take some time, but they bring in Ivan Pace, who was I think he was the MAC Defensive Player of the Year last year from Miami of Ohio. He transfers over to Cincinnati. They're still going to be very good defensively, but like I said, I just think it's going to be. I even think it's going to be hard for them to win their division and play in the championship game. To represent one of the two teams because they don't have divisions in the AAC. I just think it's going to be kind of hard for them. They just lost so much.
That and the fact that they're going to be the hunted this year, okay, after crashing the party last year in the NCAA playoff. Right. And remember, they did so with Desmond Ridder, who was a 4-year starting quarterback. So they're basically starting all over. They're starting new again. And that turnover stat that I threw out to you about Nevada, who, by the way, right now, Nevada's a 10-point favorite, and I said 8. It's my speculation that they'll be 8 when they play the game because New Mexico State's going to get steamed in the game. But as far as...
So take it now, then.
You take it now. Get the 10. But as far as Cincinnati is concerned, they were number 2 in the country last year in net turnovers at plus 15.
Yeah.
And those teams that do that are 1, 2, 3, the top 5 teams in the country in net turnovers almost always regress the next year, especially in turnovers and almost always to the spread. And you got to put Cincinnati on your play against list this season.
And they also got to go on the road at SMU, at Central Florida, at Tulsa. I think the Miami of Ohio game is going to be tougher than it normally is because that program is really at a high that they haven't been in a while. And their first game of the season is at Arkansas.
That won't be a cakewalk, believe me. That'll be a tough place for them to have to go. And if they take that loss, okay, they'll be on the heels of back-to-back losses in their college football playoff game, their season opening loss, and suddenly everything isn't cool in the Queen City for Cincinnati. So again, I think they're going to start out a little bit ragged here to begin the football season.
We have a line on that?
I don't know right now.
What do you think it should be?
I'm guessing I'm going to say Arkansas 4. Okay.
Okay. I think it'll be. Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, it could be a little bit higher.
Could be.
It all depends. I mean, if it's 4, I like Arkansas.
Yep.
I just think Arkansas is still heading up, and Cincinnati's got to come down a little bit. So, yeah. But that's a good opener. That's one of the openers you don't want to miss. All right, Central Florida, Gus Malzahn, year 2. We know Gus Malzahn knows how to coach. Last year was an 9-4 season. The quarterback situation was a mess because the quarterback went down early. Plumlee, by the way, looks like the Ole Miss kid. Looks like he might be the starter for Central Florida. They've got some nice players on offense. Ryan O'Keefe is like one of those Swiss Army knives. Yeah, Bowser at running back. The defense doesn't have any... They don't have the type of players yet that Malzahn's going to need if he wants to get this program back where they were, 5 or 6 years ago. But I suspect they're going to be even better. And I think they might actually end up better than Cincinnati this year, especially since they host Cincinnati on October 29th.
I agree with you. Gus Malzahn, there was a reason that he's not in Auburn this year. He just did not deliver the goods. I know his record looked good.
How does Auburn feel about Gus Malzahn being gone now, huh? After last year?
Well, with Brian Harsin, they're not in love.
They're not happy. No,
that's for sure. But it's always inevitable with people at Arkansas. When they lose a game they shouldn't win. All of a sudden, fire the coach. He's gone. And I think what's going on with Central Florida this particular football season here, they do lose their quarterback. Okay, who is
transferred to which team?
He transferred out to
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. Okay. Exactly right. He transferred to Oklahoma. Uh, Dylan Gilbert, I believe his name was.
Dylan Gabriel.
Dylan Gabriel, correct. That's a big loss for this football program here. But so what did Malzahn do? He had to go out and he had to hit the transfer portal really hard. That's not a good sign for football teams that usually like to recruit, but they have to revert to a transfer portal to do things just like that. But I still think because there's Cincinnati's going to get knocked down off of the totem pole here. They will be one of the football teams that will challenge them. It just depends upon what kind of quarterback they play. And this just in, I just looked what we were talking. Arkansas 7.
7. Okay.
7. There, you were right. Arkansas
I thought it
7.
would be about 6. So yeah, that's about right.
There you go.
Yeah, and again, Central Florida, by the way, their toughest non-conference game is against Louisville. They'll take on Louisville week 2 on September the 9th. And the other thing, you mentioned the transfers. Wow. I mean, going through the previews of breaking down these teams over the last few weeks, it's just a new era. It is amazing, all the transfers, and you got to. It's just a new. And look, I like it for the fact that, especially when you get these weaker teams, these weaker programs, and hey, I'd rather play for, the B-level team because I'm going to play. I'm going to start. So I think it levels the playing field more. Of course, I don't like it when the big programs get, these really superstar players. Yeah, but I think in general, because there are a lot more substandard college or average college football teams than star college football teams, I think it's better overall because I think it could sprinkle all this talent across the nation, and it makes, I think, college football generally better.
It does. It's like last year we lived with an abundance of returning starters because of the super senior rule that was in effect. Now, instead of that, we've got transfers galore. And like you say, transfers galore means better talent to football teams that especially needed it. And there are coaches take different approaches to the transfer portal here. We know all about Lane Kiffin and what he does at Mississippi. I mean, what he does is the kids he brings in kids that were starters, not just disgruntled athletes who never got to play. He wants kids that started and will start for him. Then you got the other side of the coin. You've got Dabo Swinney, you've got Kirby Smart, who don't want to enter into the transfer portal. And the reason they don't enter into the transfer portal is because if you take a player in a transfer portal, you lose that recruit in your next recruiting session.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they do a good job recruiting. Yeah.
Yes, they do an excellent job. They would rather bring in players that they need to fill their gap rather than a hand me down. That's their approach to it.
All right, Houston's next, and boy, I as a Jet fan, I wasn't very happy to see that Marcus Jones ended up with the Patriots. I think he's a sleeper draft pick because he was a superstar for Houston. I mean, terrific kick returner, underrated cover corner, but now he's gone from Houston, so that's a big loss. You take a look at Holgorsen, though. What a big year. They won 12 games. Unfortunately, they had their big year when Cincinnati was having their biggest year. So the question is how much can they duplicate that year? And I think they could do a pretty decent job because unlike Cincinnati's situation at quarterback, Clayton Tune returns. And Clayton Tune had a really good season last year. And I think out of the first 3 teams we've talked about in the AAC, Tune's the best quarterback.
Probably is inside that conference. He may well be just that. The problem here to me is that Dana Holgorsen was really rocking and reeling, and he was on a real hot seat. Okay, up until last year.
Yeah.
Okay, look at the 2 previous seasons. He won 4 and 3 games after signing that mega contract. Okay, and then he got a bonus, a bonus in his mega contract when he enters the Big 12 conference, which they're going to be doing. Okay. So now all of a sudden he's living with the king's ransom. So he doesn't really care. The question here this year is, can they fill the shoes of the Cincinnati Bearcats? My other concern is they also lose their best running back from last football season, Alton McCaskill. He ran for almost 1,000 yards last year. Tore his ACL. That's really devastating for this program here. They're going to be on my watch list here to see exactly how they get out of the gate. They've got a tough game at Texas San Antonio to begin with. Texas Tech, their second game they're on the road also, is a very underrated football team. And then they're going to host Kansas, who they're going to probably be installed as 14 or 17-point favorites.
Kansas? Watch out,
You
Lance
watch out.
Leopold.
Exactly right. Kansas is a very well-coached football team. Lance Leopold. Just ask Texas
Yes.
how well coached they are. So
Yes.
I'm not buying on Houston Cougars this year. They're going to have to prove it to me.
Yeah, actually, I gotta remember how to pronounce his name. I think it's Leopold. I forget it. I know it's not how it looks, but it's early in the college football season. We will definitely uh, talk a lot about Kansas this year because they're an up and coming team, and that's a really good handicapping tidbit I want to throw out there, and I'll mention this throughout the season. And I said this last year. Every week in college football, you are always going to see at least one, if not two or three upsets of teams that are getting 15 or more points. And now the hard part, of course, is finding those teams because there's probably like 20 of them each week. But they occur, and it's something that I always try to take advantage of. I will always pick at least one of those teams and try to find that team, and sometimes a couple times. Not going to be, and the thing is, you don't have to be right every time. As long as you're right once every 4 times, maybe 5 times, you're making money.
Yeah, once a month on a money line with the double-digit dog, that keeps the flowers in bloom.
Yes, my
Exactly
flowers in
right.
bloom.
And all you have to do is be logical about your approach and isolating those football teams. Letdowns, look-aheads, teams that are undervalued, teams that are overvalued. So I know that's one of the routes that you look at. It's one of the ones I do too because I love to play live dogs in money line plays in college football.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Can't make much in the NFL on it,
No.
but you can in college. Okay, East Carolina. Love what's going on with Mike Houston, and they get the quarterback returning again next year. Keaton Mitchell, one of the better running backs in the conference, so that's good. Do they have the team now that's ready to take that next step? There seems to be a lot of players returning from this team from last year. So and with Cincinnati coming down a little bit, Houston, maybe they're not as good as they were. So maybe East Carolina can inch a little bit closer to the top.
This is a football team that really, really improved last year, Greg. They won 7 games, and then they had a bowl bid in their back pocket, but it was canceled. They didn't weren't able to take advantage of the fruits of their rewards, if you will. So they're probably going to play with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder here. I think they're going to be a real sleeper team inside this conference this football season here. I wouldn't be surprised if they win 7 or 8 games again this year, and they end up going bowling for real this football season here. I like what they did last football season here, especially down the stretch. You look at what they did. They won 4 of their last 5 games to become bowl eligible. That was really, really impressive to me. They knocked off Memphis as a 4-point underdog here. They've got a lot working for them. East Carolina is going to be on my play-on list this season.
Yeah, and they lost on the road in back-to-back weeks at Central Florida as a 10-point dog by 4. And then the next week is a 13-point dog at Houston. They lost in overtime. And that was before their 4-game winning streak that got them into the bowl because they ended their season at home against Cincinnati.
And before those 2 losses, they had won 3 in a row. So
yes.
they very quietly put together a really good football season last year. The 2 losses to begin the season, Appalachian State and South Carolina, those aren't bad losses at all.
They lost by 3 at South Carolina.
Yeah, so they played a lot better
at home against South Carolina. Yes, that was
exactly
a very good year, and so that's why I'm thinking maybe they're going to win those games this year.
Well,
maybe
they could.
A surprise team that could contend. Schedule wise, they do have to go to Cincinnati, but they get Central Florida at home. Wow, big time start of the season. They kick off against NC State, who actually could be an ACC champion type team. They also have to go to Brigham Young.
All they need to do is to play well in the NC State game, not get blown out, just enough to keep their confidence level where it's at because they know they've got a nice football team here. If they come out of that NC State game playing a well-played football game, I think they're on their way. But remember, opening 4 games in a row at home, they could open up 3-1 easily to begin the football season.
Yeah, matter of fact, their schedule is pretty nice. They can get off to a really nice start before they have to play Central Florida, BYU, Cincinnati, and Houston towards the end of the season. All right, Memphis, one of those teams. Silverfield, year 3. Hennigan, good quarterback. So that's always something that you're looking for. That gives them an edge there. But I don't know. I just think this is a bowl team. But I don't think this is a special team. I'm not sure Silverfield. He doesn't excite me. I know that you're talking about a guy that's sort of like the like a group of fives, um, a group of five type of head coach, like what's his name, the coach from Arkansas, Pittman, is it?
Yeah, Sam Pittman, right.
Pittman, yeah, where he's not very exciting, offensive line coach, but that's a good head coach. Silverfield's okay, but he's not at that level. So yeah, I think Memphis is a bowl team, but I'm not sure they're much more than that.
Well, what they are is a team that has really lost money for their backers. He's been there. If you take a look at him, he's 6-15 to the spread in his 2 years. There's not a lot of
no wonder
people.
Why I don't like him.
There you go. Yeah, because you probably
lost money.
Yeah, you took them to the dance a couple of times and they step on your toe.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. They're gonna have to prove it to me. There was nothing special about their season last year. They won their first 3 games. They only won 3 games after that. So I think right now Silverfield, I'm going to say, is going to be, if he doesn't win this year, he'll enter next year on the hot seat here because he's won 8, he's won 6, and if he doesn't win 6 this year, then all of a sudden the temperature's dropping on this football team.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think he's that type of coach. He's that 500 type of coach. Okay, maybe he gets to a bowl every year, but is that really what Memphis is looking for? No, I think that if you recruit, I think Memphis is a very good opportunity. Now, I don't know how their finances are and all that, but that's a hotbed of recruiting. And if you get a guy that knows how to recruit, I think Memphis can be one of those top-tier AAC programs. By the way, last year they got off to that 3-0 start. One of those wins was the win at home against Mississippi State. That was a big win for me. I remember that. I had him as one of my top picks that week, and I got kind of lucky because that was just a weird game. There were some weird plays, but then after that, after starting 3-0 and beating Mississippi State, they would lose 3 straight, 4 out of 5. And 6 out of 8. It was just, how do you not take advantage of that 3-0 start?
Yeah, that was dismal to say the least. They salvaged a win, if you will, their last game of the season by eking out a win over Tulane. So nothing special about that football team last year. If I had to give them a grade, I would say C- last year.
SMU, Rhett Lashley is now the new head coach because, Sonny Dykes, I believe, is now at TCU, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Rhett Lashley has ties to SMU. Tanner Mordecai's back. So that's a big advantage to have Tanner Mordecai. He's one of those really good gunslinging type of group of 5 quarterbacks. So Rashee Rice is a very good receiver. They're going to put up a ton of points. Defensively, though, I don't see it happening. But I could see SMU definitely winning a couple of games they're not supposed to, but also losing a couple of games they're not supposed to. I think they'll have a good season, but nothing special.
Lashley was a good hire for this football program here. Comes from Miami of Florida, well respected, and they're going to improve their defense. They have to, just by osmosis, because that was not Sonny Dykes' forte at all. The question is how much of an offense can they keep and reestablish? That's going to be the question mark here. It's tough for me to bring a new coach into a program that's gone bowling 3 years in a row. To make a case for him initially out of the gate when he has no coaching experience, no head coaching experience. So yes. I'm going to put them on my watch list this year as well.
And then rounding out some of these other teams in the conference, Tulsa and Tulane. Billy Montgomery saved his job last year with Tulsa getting to a bowl. He doesn't get that team to a bowl and win those last 3 games. He's not back again this year, so we'll see what happens. And I don't really expect much out of Tulsa. Tulane, though, had a very, very disappointing season last year. Willie Fritz, he's a guy that we all kind of like because he's one of those underdog story coaches, and Tulane was off to a good start. But last year with Fritz, it just bottomed out really bad, and now he's kind of on the hot seat. But I expect them to rebound this year. I think they're going to be one of those teams that maybe we could take advantage of their 2 wins last year.
Well, before I get to Tulane, and I'm a big Willie Fritz guy, the Tulsa situation last year, like you mentioned, they salvaged their season with 4 straight wins, and they won 6 of the last 8 games to go bowling. They've gone bowling 2 years in a row now. So that's sort of, if you will, it does for sure. It keeps Montgomery off the hot seat. This will be his 8th year with the football program here, but he's going to have to do better than what he's doing here. 6 wins just doesn't cut it, especially when you're a long-term coach like that. Good to the spread last year. I think they'll struggle to win those 7 games this year. Willie Fritz, as you mentioned here, I like everything Willie Fritz does. Only 2 wins last football season here. People are going to want to jump ship, if you will. But look at those numbers last year, Greg. In our 4-year statistical review, which I love looking at, okay, they went from 6 wins to 2 wins last football season here. But look at their stats last year. They were almost identical to their 6-win season here. They don't slip backwards 2 yards offensively, and they slipped backwards 7 yards defensively. So what happened with the football program here? They lost close call games, and they had turnovers didn't work in their way. That usually turns around the next year, and I think it'll do just that for Tulane this football season. I've got them on my play-on list.
All right, and then also we've got South Florida. That's the team I said is my sleeper here. East Carolina has a sleeper chance in my mind to win the conference, but South Florida has a sleeper type of year where I think they could go bowling and maybe upset a couple of teams that nobody's expecting. They got a ton of kids back. They were playing a ton of young kids last year. Jeff Scott is a tremendous hire. They get Bohannon now at quarterback because their quarterback situation was really ugly last year. If they had a decent quarterback, they could have won a lot of those. They could have won those close games. So I like the fact that Bohannon's there now, and I believe that South Florida is on the rise, and they're going to start making waves this season.
I believe so too. Only 3 wins in 2 years, but don't give up on Jeff Scott. He's very, very well respected. Okay. And he also played a lot of young kids last year. They're going to come back very, very experienced this football season here. They got a ton of returning starters coming back. They've got all 5 starters on their offensive line coming back. You mentioned Bohannon, the kid who transfers in from Baylor. They got the makings of being a real good surprise football team this year. And I'm with you. I think this football team has the making to be a bowl team this year.
Yeah, and they got a tough schedule, which is the only thing that might hurt their bowl chances because BYU, as we mentioned, and Florida and Louisville on the road to start that basically that's their September schedule. 3 of their FBS opponents, so that's going to be kind of tough out of the gate. Navy and Temple will round it out, and unfortunately, the Navy's going through a tough spell now. For the second straight year, they've only won a combined 7 games. And look, this is what happens when you don't have one of your dynamic quarterbacks at Navy. It just changes everything for the program, and that's been the problem the last couple of years.
Well, it has, and but I'm going to still stick with Coach N here, Niumatalolo. He does a great job with this program. He's off back-to-back losing seasons, and I like what he did, like I mentioned earlier on in the show here, their effort against Army to end the football season last year. They could have rolled over and died, but they didn't. Uh, I think that bodes well for this football program coming in here this football season here. I think they got a good chance to come back strong this football season here, and I'm going to put Navy on my surprise list this year. In fact, I think Navy is going to win their 6 games, and I think Navy's going to go bowling this year.
Okay, and then Temple, they get a first-year coach, Stan Drayton. It's going to be a long year.
It's been that way for Temple for the longest of times, too. Since Matt Rule left the program, basically, the program's really gone south since then. 4 wins in the last 2 football seasons here. Not a whole lot to get excited about this football season here. I think in their first 5 games of the football season here is when they've got to make their hay. They don't face a winning team in any of their first 5 games. They've got to win at least 2 of those games if they're going to want to have any forward progress here. Will they be able to do that? That means they're going to have to beat Rutgers at home or Massachusetts home. They get to beat Duke on the road. They can beat Massachusetts, okay, but they won't beat Rutgers. And they'll beat Lafayette, that's a given. But Duke is going to be a real tough game here. It depends on what they do to begin the season, because look at their schedule going out here. Of all their remaining games here, they only face 2 losing teams here. I think it's going to be another down year for Temple this season.